What is up, guys? Back again with another video, and this time we are going to be talking about meal timing, okay? Because this is a topic that you will hear very dichotomous viewpoints on, where some people will say meal timing is completely irrelevant, it doesn't matter, just hit your macros, just hit your calories, and be on your way, okay? And to an extent, they are bang on the money. Then you will also hear the people that say, oh, meal timing is everything. It actually doesn't matter too much about the calories and the macros as long as you get your meal timing perfect. You know, it sets you up into a fat burning machine. It stokes the metabolic fire, okay? And a lot of what they say is wrong, okay? And what I want to get across is there is this dichotomy, okay? And one side says a lot of wrong things, okay? Which leads people to then say everything they said completely wrong. Let's throw the baby out with the bathwater and just forget about everything they said, right? And this group over here that are saying more right things, and they're erring more on the side of quote unquote science, and you're kind of going, let's listen to them completely, okay? And that is where the fitness industry as a whole generally is at. However, you do still see people going, it's all about your meal timing, it's all about getting your meals in at specific times and whatever else, okay? However, I think a lot of people have missed the forest for the trees with this, and they have literally thrown the baby out with the bathwater with the meal timing stuff, okay? So if we break it down, at the end of the day, it is calories are absolutely king. Okay, so if your calories aren't where they need to be, if you aren't in a calorie surplus, you aren't at maintenance, or you aren't in a calorie deficit, you are not going to achieve the goals you've set out to achieve. Okay, like it doesn't matter. If you want to lose weight and you have your meals perfectly structured and perfectly timed out, spaced out, perfect, macronutrient composition, you have enough protein, you have, this portion control, portion sized carbohydrate source and, fat source, everything. Your meals from a picture look perfect. You couldn't fault them with your food choices, anything. If you don't have your calories where they need to be, then it's irrelevant. You're not going to move towards your goals. Okay, like if you are eating 500 extra calories than your body needs and you're trying to lose weight, you are still going to gain weight. The magical meal timing strategy doesn't affect calorie balance. Yes, it affects calorie balance because generally what people are saying is, oh, we're going to set up your meal timing so that, you're not hungry or you're not feeling fatigued or you're not feeling that you're on a diet or whatever, and that you are actually still eating in a deficit. But as I said, you do get these extreme viewpoints where it's like, it's just about the timing. Once you have it timed perfectly, then everything else is irrelevant. You're stoking that metabolic fire, which just isn't a thing, right? So calories are king. However, meal timing is still not irrelevant. You can't just say calories are king. So how you space your meals out and how you time your meals is completely irrelevant, because that's not entirely true. Like, yes, it's a half truth, right? It's kind of true, but it's not really true, right? And this is especially the case when we discuss protein, okay? Because like the body has no stores for protein, okay? And I say that kind of half giving you the truth, because your body does have stores of protein. That is your organs, your muscle, that kind of stuff, right? So you don't want to eat into those to get the amino acids your body needs, right? So you need to have this constant supply of amino acids from the diet so that you aren't eating into your stores. Okay, that's pretty easy to understand. You do the same with carbohydrates. You eat your carbohydrates. This is not technically true, but you eat your energy substrates. They get converted into glycogen, stored in your muscles or liver or wherever. And when you need those carbohydrates, if you don't have any from the diet, you just eat into your stores. Okay, but we don't really care about that a huge amount because that's a very normal process. Same with the fat stores. Again, it's not a like for like. You eat fat, it turns to fat. It's a little bit more true than the carbohydrates, but even still, you have this surplus of fats. They get stored. If you need to tap into some fat stores or energy substrate stores, you can eat into your fat stores. Okay, with protein, it's not really the same, because while yes, you can eat into your muscle stores or your organ stores, like that's a very bad thing in the long run, even in the short term as well, right? So you don't want to be eating into your protein stores. So protein timing is a little bit more important. And what you see this is, especially when you really get into the calories and macro debate stuff, and people are like, it's just all calories and macros, that's all that matters. And people are kind of like, okay, so if that's all that matters, why are we just viewing things on a 24-hour scale? And like we've talked about this before, people will start thinking of it on a weekly scale or a monthly scale, and that's 100% true. It is the bigger picture. It's not just, one day I was in a calorie deficit, so I'm going to lose weight. It's the bigger picture overview of how your diet has been trending, how your diet has consistently been, that will influence the end result, right? So people will start getting that big picture and going, okay, well, if meal timing is irrelevant and it doesn't really make a huge difference, then let's just have all our protein on Saturday. Like you wouldn't say that, but again, like this is using a bit of a straw man argument. If meal timing is completely irrelevant, just eat all your protein one day per week, right? And again, that's not something that you want to be doing, right? So we can all pretty much agree on that meal timing is some way important, especially as it has to do with protein, okay? So as a very general rough and ready rule, you want to be eating 3 to 4 protein servings per day, whether you're Gen Pop or you're an athlete. If you're an athlete, you may need more servings per day, but that's generally a function of you having more muscle mass and also having a higher energy requirement, right? So you're just going to need to kind of spread out your meals a little bit more. Like you can still get that 3 to 4 servings. You might just find that there's like a bigger time between when you're training. Like you may be training twice per day, for example, in the morning and the evening. And if you have only 4 meals to work in, like there's probably going to be a section of the day where you're either hungry or you're just inadequately fueled, shall we say, right? So generally speaking, you will see bigger athletes or bigger people, spacing more meals out throughout the day. And again, this is also a case where, meal timing is more important, especially if you are that double day athlete where you have a training session in the morning and a training session in the evening. Like saying meal timing is irrelevant for that individual, like that is, in my mind, very bad advice, because that individual is going to train hard in the morning, and if they go, meal timing is irrelevant, I'll eat whenever, like they very potentially are not going to be fueled for their next session. And again, that's fine in the context of a single day. Who really cares? Like, yes, your one training session there was a little bit off. You weren't quite fueled. You weren't quite ready for it. Cool, right? That's no big deal. We all have off sessions as it is. So it's not a big deal. However, if you consistently do that and you're consistently having terrible sessions, consistently being inadequately fueled, consistently performing poorly in one of your sessions, 2 of your sessions, because you are just refusing to actually adhere to some sort of meal structure, some sort of timing of your meals, because you believe, it's irrelevant, just hit my calories and hit my macros, that's cool, right? So in that case, it's going to become more important. Meal timing also becomes more important, especially if you're, training fasted. You don't want to be eating into your energy requirements, we'll say, energy stores, we'll say, and your protein stores. Like you're breaking down the body and asking it to recover, asking it to repair itself, and then not fueling it for hours. Like you train fasted in the morning and then you don't eat again until 6 p.m. Again, your muscles are not going to fall off. It's not going to be something where it's like, trained fasted, didn't get a chance to eat, I might as well not have trained, or I've just actually ruined myself. My body is now catabolic. I've lost all my gains. That's obviously not the case either. However, again, we need to zoom out. We need to look at this and go, if you're consistently doing this, then that would suggest that you don't have a properly planned out diet. And again, this is what you will generally see when people say they are evidence-based, or they're following the science, and they're going, yeah, it's just calories and macros. Forget about, meal timing. It's irrelevant. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but you're only saying that coming from the context of, quote unquote, knowing what a good diet looks like, or knowing how to space out your meals to have no hunger, no real energy deficit, no real fatigue throughout the day, or anything like that. Whereas you say that to someone and they go, oh, it's irrelevant, I'll just eat all my meal or all my food at the end of the day. And it's like, okay, you've eaten like a sparrow all day, and now you're trying to eat like a fucking champion at night. And it's like that, for most people, that just doesn't work. This is especially true for those people that find it hard to gain weight, because again, like this is the exact strategy that people will do when they try to gain weight, and they're that normal kind of, we'll say, ectomorph, if you want to use that term. They're that normal skinnier kind of person. They'll be like, yeah, like breakfast, I kind of skipped that. Lunch, I had like 300, 400 calories. And then I went training, and then I want to try hit about 3,500 or 4,000, we'll say, to gain. And they leave it all until the evening to eat that food, and then they go, oh, I just get too full, I can't eat. And it's like, yeah, well, if you spread it out a little bit more throughout the day, it's going to be a little bit easier than trying to fucking hammer down 3,000 calories in one meal. Like it's not hard to do for people who have big appetites to get 3,000 calories down. But if you find yourself having a very, very poor appetite, like, you are going to be way better off spacing out your meals and having some sort of structure to your overall meal timing. So again, like, meal timing is not irrelevant in that case. And like, we can keep going through this and find countless situations where meal timing is more relevant. Again, like, you could say, I don't know, again, we've covered the athletes, we've covered the skinny gainer person, and like, there are other cases where you could go, okay, well, meal timing is going to be more beneficial there. Like, again, you could be diabetic. Obviously, it's hugely important. Then you could be, maybe a student or something. You could be training in the evening, and you've got a relatively manually intense job, and you want to be fueled for the evening training. Like, you can go through it, and I'm sure people watching this video are thinking like, okay, yeah, actually, meal timing is probably more relevant for me. And I also presume there's going to be people in this that are like, yeah, meal timing for me is relatively irrelevant as long as I'm able to hit my calories and have somewhat of a smart protein distribution, because that's the main one with the meal timing, having like 3 to 4 protein feedings spread out throughout the day. Again, once I hit that kind of leucine threshold. But overall, even if you're kind of going like, oh yeah, it's relatively irrelevant for me, this would be the case if you just train once per day. You're that, we'll say that Gen Pop trainer. Even if you're potentially a bodybuilder, it's like, yeah, you train once per day, you've got nothing else really going on. As long as you're not being completely stupid with your meal distribution, especially your protein distribution, like, you're going to be relatively well fueled come the next training session, which may be the next day. Like, if you just train, say, 4 evenings per week, like, as long as you're eating somewhat of a relatively sane meal distribution, and you're hitting your calories and your macros, like, the timing of things is relatively irrelevant, as long as you are not feeling massively hungry throughout the day, and as long as you are, feeling adequately fueled for your evening workouts. Even if you are sitting at a desk all day, like, you do probably still want to have some sort of pre-workout nutrition, whether it's a meal 2 hours beforehand, an hour beforehand, or whatever. Like, you do still want to have some sort of, meal. And this is, again, everything comes back to context when you discuss nutrition, because when people say, oh, it's irrelevant, it's like, yeah, okay, you're saying that from the perspective of talking about people that already have most things in place. Like, people will talk about like, oh, meal timing is irrelevant, this post-workout anabolic feeding, this post-workout window where you must slam a protein shake. It's like, yeah, like, it's pretty much bullshit. However, if you are fasting throughout the morning, and then you train, and you're training in a fasted state, like, that protein feeding after your workout becomes, relatively speaking, more important, right? Whereas if you're training and you have we'll say you're training again at that same point in time, that afternoon kind of time, and you have a protein feeding before the gym. We'll say again you have that pre-workout nutrition an hour or 2 hours before the gym. Like that post-workout protein feeding is less, relatively speaking, important, because you're still digesting that protein. It's still like those amino acids still dripping into the bloodstream, and like you still have, we'll call it a positive nitrogen balance, even though nitrogen balance is not a great measure, but you still have protein kind of coming into the system. So again, it's relatively speaking less important. And again, this is where you see when people start talking in black and white with nutrition, and it's like, oh yeah, it's either this or it's that. It's like it's not a great way to look at nutrition. So while meal timing is not the be all and end all, and you're not stoking the metabolic fire by eating every 2 to 3 hours, saying that meal timing is irrelevant is also somewhat asinine. Like it's kind of, again, you're missing the broader picture, or rather you're looking at the broader picture and you're not actually looking after the things that are going to allow you to actually hit that broader picture. Because again, if you go, oh yeah, it's just calories, and you aren't actually hitting your calories because you have no structure to your overall day, like we said in that skinny individual that wants to gain weight. Like if you have no structure and as a result you're not able to hit your calorie targets, then meal timing is fucking really relevant for you. It's really important for you. You need to have some sort of structure to your day, some sort of timing of your meals that allows you to actually adhere to that. And again, it's the same if you're dieting and you're going, look, it's just hit my calories, and then there's these huge portions throughout the day where you're absolutely starving and thus more likely to make poor dietary choices. Like again, that's a poor dietary setup, that's a poor meal timing setup, because you've left yourself open for these potential lapses in your overall adherence to your perfectly laid out plan, So you have to think of it. Yes, I'm not recommending here that everyone set their watch and they have to eat every 3 hours, because you have to have this perfectly immaculate time, schedule, structure to your diet. No, that's not what I'm saying, right? But I'm also not saying the other side of things where it's like, yeah, it's irrelevant. In some cases, it's highly relevant, right? In most cases, it's somewhat relevant, and to the extent that you should have a quote-unquote normal distribution of meals, Once you're having those 3 to 4 meals per day, like you can literally say, yeah, meal timing is relatively irrelevant, because in that context, it kind of is. Like it doesn't matter if you have one meal at 3 p.m. and the next day you have it at 2 p.m. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you go, oh, I'm going to have, 3 to 5, and you're going to be like, I have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 2 snacks. You have a mid-morning snack, and then you have a snack when you finish work before you hit the gym. So like that, again, you have a relatively normal protein distribution, a relatively normal meal distribution that probably keeps your energy levels pretty stable throughout the day. Keeps you feeling fueled, allows you to actually hit the numbers you want to hit, and overall improves your adherence to the plan, versus someone who goes, yeah, meal timing is irrelevant, like I'll have breakfast and then I'll literally wing it for the rest of the day. Like I might have lunch, or I might actually skip that and I might have a snack then before the gym, and it's like, oh well, actually I didn't have anything prepared for lunch and I was actually starving, and it gets a lot more messy. Again, like we're kind of talking about two things here, about meal timing and structuring your overall day, but obviously they are intrinsically linked, because if you're just going like, I'm going to wing it, I have no structure to my diet itself, like you don't know what you're going to hit, like that's obviously a case where you potentially also don't have a meal timing strategy, okay? So again, we don't want this black and white thinking. With meal timing, yes, it is relatively irrelevant once you are hitting your calories and once you are hitting your protein targets. However, having some sort of meal timing strategy, whether that is, even intermittent fasting, I don't care, like you have to have some sort of structure to your day, some sort of idea of how you're going to time your meals that makes sense for when you're training, when you are hungry, when you are, feeling fatigued throughout the day, when do you need energy, or maybe again, you notice you find eating carbs in the morning makes you feel sluggish and lethargic. Then again, like timing your meals so that you're like, okay, well actually I know I'm going to change the distribution of the carbs and I'm going to have less carbs, say, for example, for breakfast, and I'm going to have more around my training. Again, you have to have some sort of structure to your diet, because if you don't, yes, you probably still will be able to get results. It just makes it harder to get those results. And what you will find, generally speaking, it is the people who have spent a lot of time doing all this diet stuff that will say, yeah, it's irrelevant, as a kind of throwaway statement, forgetting that they already have really sound nutritional practices set up and in place, right? Whereas literally most people have relatively terrible nutritional practices and processes set up. So telling someone who is just general population that meal timing is completely irrelevant, just hit your calories and macros, yes, that is sound advice, but that doesn't enable them to actually set up a diet that they can adhere to, a structure that they can actually hit those calories and macros. So again, it's not black or white. Meal timing is irrelevant, but also completely relevant. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with this stuff, and we do want to set up a structure for the diet that allows us to actually hit the targets that we want to hit. At the end of the day, calories are king, and once you're getting a relatively even spread of protein throughout the day, then you could say meal timing is generally irrelevant. But again, it has to have context layered onto it, and you have to be able to hit a timing schedule, a structure that allows you to actually adhere to that, and that respects all the other things that you have going on in your life.